जयतु जयतु देवो देवकी नन्दनोऽयं जयतु जयतु कृष्णो वृष्णिवंशप्रदीपः जयतु जयतु मेघश्यामलः कोमलाङ्गो जयतु जयतु पृथ्वी भारनाशो मुकुन्दः जयतु जयतु पृथ्वी भारनाशो मुकुन्दः. This particular prayer is from Mukundamala by Kulasekhara Alvar. The moment he prayed this particular sloka, immediately Krishna appeared before him. You know that's the power of this particular sloka. The moment, the devotion is also very important. The moment he prayed this particular 4 lines of sloka, this one, that Jayatu Jayatu is a word, he appeared before him. That's why immediately when he prayed, he has to do the Jayatu Jayatu. That means Mangala Sasanam immediately. So now we ask Sriman Srinivasa Acharya Varu to say few words about the speaker. Jai Sriman Narayan, Srimati Raman Angsuman Chakraborty. We welcome Angsuman Chakraborty and Srinivasa Acharyalu. Srinivasa will say few words about Sri Pravachana Goshthi, what all the programs which we are having in brief, and also say about Angsuman Chakraborty's bio also. So we ask Sriman Jai Srimati Srinivasa Acharyalu. Jai Sriman. Yeah.
We welcome Sriman Angsuman Chakraborty from Kolkata, India, as our speaker for 102nd Tara Devi Memorial Lecture Series. The Tara Devi lectures are held every second Saturday. They are normally held evening Chicago time. However, we are doing this Saturday morning as our honorable speaker is in the IST time zone. The lecture will be available on Srinivasa Ramanuja International Pravachana Goshthi, our Facebook page, and also on our YouTube channel for those of you who will be listening to it later. The topic for today is Science of Vedanta and how modern science echoes Vedantic principles. A brief bio of our honorable speaker, Sriman Angsuman Chakraborty. Sriman Angsuman Chakraborty is the founder and chief architect of Relaso Enterprise Software Private Limited. Angsuman ji has over 26 years of industry experience in architecting, designing, and developing software products for Fortune 500 companies and startup companies in the United States and in India. He was a chief software architect in Oakland-based Double Twist Inc., where he contributed to the first worldwide annotation of the human genome. Angsuman ji graduated with B.Tech honors from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. At Relaso, he developed the flagship product for the company, Relaso Social CRM, an enterprise social CRM for medium to large enterprises. He led outsourcing initiatives with Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 corporations like Invitrogen Inc., Millipore Inc., Thermo Fisher Scientific, etc. With this, we welcome Sriman Angsuman Chakraborty ji as our 102nd Tara Devi Memorial Lecture Series speaker.
So today I will talk about the science of Advaita Vedanta and how modern science, and by modern science I just don't mean theoretical physics, I mean experimental physics. They echo the Vedantic realizations that were made many thousands of years ago. So when we are talking about science, the first thing we need to understand is the scientific mindset. And by scientific mindset, it is, when we are open to new ideas and experimentation, and and experimentation is actually very key to science, because if something disagrees with experiment, then it is wrong, said Dr. Richard Feynman, and it is generally accepted as a key tenet of modern science. And of course, your the research, your exploration has to be rooted in the fundamentals of science, and you should be open to correcting yourself. In this context, Swami Vivekananda said few things which are very pertinent to this. He said, "Do not believe a thing because you have read about it in a book. Do not believe a thing because another man has said it was true. Do not believe in words because they are hallowed by tradition. Find out the truth for yourself. Reason it out. That is realization." So you see it, the exploration, the process is very much scientific in nature, but we'll get into more details and in the coming slide, in the coming discussion. So as you can see, all religion today and anytime is based on personal experiences. So one of the things with every religion is it is based on personal experience, and this is the personal experience which is also the same with any scientific. You do not believe a theory just because someone says so. You can go and repeat the experiments of Newton. You can find out the Bernoulli's principle for yourself. You follow the procedure that has been laid out. You can devise your own experiments, and you can verify or you can disprove what has been stated. And that is the foundation of science. So when we, by the way, I have some slides to share with you. Okay. Would that be okay to share, or should I share after the presentation?
You can share. There is a sharing option.
You can share. There is a sharing option. Available. Yeah, I know, but hang on. Let me open this through the, because I have opened it in the mobile. The slides are on my desktop. So give me a minute. Let me see if I can share it from here.
You have to actually connect to the desktop.
Yeah, I'm trying to log in with AC. Request permission. Oh. Okay. Anyway, let me continue. So, in the science of, now we will talk about the science of religion, specifically the Vedanta. It is based upon certain key tenets. As we discussed, it is based upon personal experience. You do not have to believe what someone else has experienced. You can take it as a starting point, but unless you have a direct personal experience, direct realization, you cannot be said to have, be a religious person. Real religion comes from personal experience, and that's the foundation. There is a scientifically worked out method for reaching the truth. Whether you follow the path of Shankha Yoga or Raj Yoga, whether you follow the path of Gyan Yoga. And whenever I mention I'm specifically not referring to Hatha Yoga, which has become very popular in US and everywhere in the world these days, also known as yoga. Hatha Yoga is a set of practice to improve your body. Nothing to do with spiritual uplift. And of course, I'm trying to mention about the newer variants like Vikram Yoga, etc. Now, in the past, Hatha Yoga practices were used to prepare the body So you could do Raj Yoga or Shankha Yoga, etc. So they are preparatory exercises. However, as you know, they are very good for improving your health. But when I speak of yoga, um, I'm not talking about Raj Yoga. Similarly, when you read Bhagavad Gita, whenever there is a mention of yoga, they are not talking about Hatha Yoga. They are talking about Shankha Yoga or yoga in general. Yoga, as you know, is addition, or essentially it's not addition in this. There is also another meaning, which is a connection. A connection with your soul, with Parabrahma. That is what yoga is about. So specifically, I will touch upon Raj Yoga, but I will also get into more details on the Gyan Yoga. The key tenets of these spiritual practices are, there is a very well-defined, scientifically worked out method for reaching the ultimate goal, for finding out the truth for yourself. What is outside is inside. That was one of the key realizations that was made by our saints in the early days. So you see, the outside is varied, and you may spend millions or millions of lifetimes. Even then, you'll be able to know everything that is there to the outside world. They realize, though, that what is outside, that is outside is also inside. Today's science has stated and accepted the fact that we are all made of stardust. They have realized it long back. So instead of focusing on the varied outside world, they said, let's inside. And in the process of understanding the inside, their inner being, they conquered not only the inside, but also the outside. And how do we acquire knowledge in general? We observe something, and then we make generalizations based on that observation. An astronomer looks at the skies, looks at the stars, the constellations, observes them for years together, for decades, and then he hypothesizes something, and then he validates something, and essentially he comes up with new ideas, new theories, etc. Same, about a biologist with his microscope. So in any scientific discipline, you need to observe, and you need an instrument for observation, right? Whether it's a telescope, whether it's a microscope, or some other instrument. These are, some of the, and then of course, based on your observation, you gain deeper understanding, and you do generalization, and your knowledge depends on the subject. So the process is not different. The process is not different here. The only thing is, here, instead of observing the stars, instead of observing the bacteria, the microbes, we observe our own mind. And we observe it with the instrument of our mind. So here too we have an instrument, but it is our own mind. Mind has this unique capacity of reflection, and that allows us to look inside. And how do we do that? With the power of attention. The same thing we do it, when we study, we have to give attention, we have to concentrate on the subject matter. Here we also do the same thing, except maybe the concentration required is much more. And there is a reason for it. We are attuned to the external world. Whenever we concentrate on anything, it's normally everything is external to us. We read a book, we watch a movie, we listen to a video. Everything is external for us. And so concentrating on external items is easier. We haven't been trained nowadays to focus internally, to observe our own mind. In the olden days, there was this habit in India that people used to do pranayam, and in the process, they did a certain amount of self-observation. That is nowadays getting lost by the day, that art. So people are very much external focus. The science of religion requires you to focus inward with your full attention. like any scientific discipline where you spend years understanding the subject and then observing it, making deductions, and essentially follow the same process. And you don't have to believe anything upfront. You find out everything for yourself, follow a set procedure, and unless you prove it, you don't have to blindly believe anything in this process. There is no mystery, there is no magic, there is no mystery, there is no supernatural. There is a saying that pretty advanced science looks like magic. Same with religion. For people who do not understand the basics, for them it may look mysterious. It's not that. It's very scientific, very well established, and a very well defined procedure for going, for progressing on the path of spirituality. No belief is necessary. Truth requires no prop. However, as with any scientific discipline, long and constant practice is necessary. Now, you must have all heard the story of Janaka Raja, who attained Brahma Gyan in less than an hour, or Pingala, who attained in less than a night. However, for normal people with not that amount of clarity of intellect, it takes longer. Sometimes, several years, decades, sometime at the end of the life, or sometimes through several lifetimes. As with any effort, more concentrated your effort is, faster you can achieve that. So it's a very, if you look at it, there is nothing that that is mystery or mysterious or magical about it. And all it requires is your dedication, your attention. Attention is all you need. So, in the path of religious exploration, I particularly in the Advaita Vedanta, one of the first basic questions we ask: who am I? When we say who am I, the answer I am so and so, like was given. I am so and so. I have done it. And then people imagine something about the body, But if you decide to think, if you just look even a bit inwards, you realize, and if you are analytical in nature, you realize you really cannot be the ever-changing body. You are the same person from your childhood till today, yet your body has significantly changed. You were really small in your childhood. It has grown significantly larger. And where did that extra mass come from? Of course, from the food and drinks. And where the excretion of the body goes and in what form. And then if you look, are the cells in your body, do they remain the same? If every minute 300 million human cells die, of course they're replaced by newer cells. So are you still the same? And then of these human cells, human cells constitute only 43% of the cells of the body. Bacteria, virus, fungi, etc. All right. So, now you may think that what about the brain cells? Do they grow? Well, earlier on they thought that certain parts of the brain continue to create new neural cells only during infancy. However, recently in the last 2 decades, it was found that the hippocampus, a region of the brain associated with memories, learning, and emotion, continue to create new cells, throughout your life. And then, if you are imagining that you are your brain, I wanted to show you a picture of a man without a brain. What happened was in his childhood, there was fluid accumulation in his brain. And, after there was some pain, they forgot all about it. And later on, when he had a pain in the leg, they did a brain scan. and he found out that he literally had no brain. The whole brain area has been, it has, gray matter has vanished because of fluid accumulation over the years. And yet he was a normal householder, he was married, he had children, and he worked in a government job in France, quite successfully at it. Yet the man had no brain. I will share with you PDF of the presentation after this, and so you can refer. And everything that I discussed today, all the research and everything, there are links provided. So independently verify, and I insist that you verify everything that I am saying. Again, don't believe anything that I am saying. Verify it for yourself and yourself that yes, it has made it. So, is your body like the ship of Theseus? So there is this, story of the ship of Theseus. What happens is a thought experiment. If you individually change every part of your ship over the years due to repair and maintenance, and ultimately the whole ship is replaced, does it remain the same ship? Now, in our case, you can see your body is constantly getting replaced, including your brain cells. Brain cells die, and the main reason, the hippocampus, they get replaced also. But you remain the same. Of the Shamved and Brahmashmi. I am Brahman, from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad of the Yajurveda. This whole concept of the Ved, the Upanishad, which is a part of the Ved, specifically from the Aranyaka section of the Ved, is that Brahman, and Brahman here I don't mean the caste, I mean the Brahman as in Parabrahm, is the only reality, and everything else is illusion. Brahmashatta Jagat Mithya Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. Brahman is the only truth, the world is unreal, and there is no difference between Brahman and Atma, the individual self. It was said by Adi Shankaracharya and Vivek Chudamani. So, when I say everything is Brahman, I mean everything sentient and non-sentient, everything around you, without an exception. It is dense, it is all around you, and there is nothing beyond this universe or in the entire multiverse and beyond. Everything is in Brahman. But it doesn't mean that Brahman is like a composite thing. It's homogeneous, it's single. Actually, the word is not even used single. Because that is, when we say single, we imagine a double, something else. But it is non-dual. There is nothing else. Everything is the consciousness, the super consciousness of Brahman. And within that, everything, the world is linked. That, when someone first hears it, it sounds a very peculiar, very strange concept, because we see everything around us, and how they can be unreal. I can touch something, I can feel it, I can hear the sound. How can that be unreal? Because I have a direct physical perception of it. But then think about your dreams. You have space, you have objects, you interact with them, you talk to people, you go from place to place, you hear things, you talk, everything happens, and yet all the while you are sleeping in your bed, and none of this is real. Everything has been played in our mind. Isn't that the same with our reality? What do we really know? All we get are certain perceptions that comes from our sense organs, our eyes, our ears, and that signals are carried through our nerve to somewhere in the brain, and somewhere a mental image is formed, and that mental image is interpreted by someone unknown, and we get a perception of the reality around us. if you have seen the Matrix movie, there it was postulated that if these sensory impulses can be artificially induced, then we can get the same feeling of the world without living in the world, and which is true, because ultimately these are electrical signals, and there is no reason why you cannot artificially induce them. Nerve signals can be induced, and today even false memory implanted. I have shared the link in the presentation of false memory implantation. So you see, this is not as far-fetched as it sounds when we initially talk about it. So to continue further, the ultimate Brahman is devoid of attributes. Nirgun Brahman. The entire phenomenal universe is subjected to the categories of space, time and causation, but the supreme reality is beyond. We see these three concepts: the space, the time, the causation. Time we intrinsically understand. I have started some time back and I'm continuing the presentation. Time is almost like an inherent part of our life, and we are very much driven by time. Space, I am in Kolkata, you are in Chicago, and the concept of distance also comes with the concept of time. Say, for example, if I am to go a place 1 kilometer apart, even with the fastest vehicle, I will take a short amount of time. But if I have to go to Chicago, I'll take a much longer time. So the space is also identified through time. And you will see why this concept is important to understand in detail. So there is an associated time element with space. And there is also a concept of finite time. In the sense that, like, if I have to, in spite of a take, there will be a finite positive time to reach from point A to point B. However, here we say that all this, these are mere illusions, and when you realize the Supreme Brahman, you realize that all of these are completely illusions. They are just figment of imagination in our mind. And even the causality says that the causality is also imposed. So if you in Yog Vasishtha, there are Vasishtha Muni mentions that there are certain universes where even causality doesn't exist. Causality is something, a rule that has been created by Brahma, the Brahma of the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Brahma is not subject to causality, but independent of the causal chain. That which is not destroyed when the upadhis of time, space, and causation is destroyed is Brahman, the immortal reality. So along with comes the concept of Jagat Mithya. The world is in nature. What you see, even though it appears to be real, it is just in your mind. And that's actually a very manifestation. So one of the common objection you find is that, wait, two people, we see almost the same thing. Now, here, you are aware of changes in color perception of different people. That famous internet meme about green and blue. But there, when people have certain eye diseases, they also perceive the world differently. But beyond that, if you go to any trial court, you will find out even, any set of people, even well-meaning, honest people, they will describe the very same incident differently. And this is the reason why many criminals go unpunished. Because, it is almost very easy to point out the differences in testimony and thus refute them. And you can try this simple experiment. Any single event that 4 people have seen, ask them to describe it in their own words. You will always find minor differences. The differences in our perception of reality shows even with such trivial incidents. The appearances of, now here is this statement. I believe this is from Yog Vasishtha as far as I remember. The appearance of reality of the universe depends on the strength of will. So, that's actually a very concept. Bill Gates wasn't born real. He's Microsoft. And he managed to convey that vision to many people. Ultimately, it became a reality. Same with the universe. It is said that this universe is a vision of Brahma, and because of his strength of mind, we see similar vision as he sees, irrespective of the fact that it is not a reality, but that dream, it's a shared dream that we see along with Brahma. And because his strength of vision is so strong, we see something very similar. But if I imagine, because my strength is not that much, I may not be able to show it to other people, or maybe very few people will see that. It all depends upon the strength of your will. Let's look at what modern science has found about this concept of space, time, causality, and reality in general. So you must have heard about, the concept of quantum entanglement, or as Dr. Einstein used to call them, spooky action at a distance. He postulated back in the 1930s, that based on the principles of quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement is possible, and he used that as a means to discredit the quantum mechanics. However, over time, it has been theoretically proven. But something happened very interesting in the recent years, and which I would to go into details in the coming minutes. So quantum entanglement is a physical phenomenon that occurs when pairs or group of particles, photons or atoms, electrons, are generated or interact in ways such that the quantum state of each particle cannot be described independently. Instead, a quantum state must be described for the system as a whole. So, essentially, imagine a gamma ray, a photon. It is of such a high energy, and high energy gamma, photon, many times it automatically splits into two photons, and they are, by birth, they are entangled. So if you change, for example, the spin of one of them, the others will correspondingly change, and they will change independent of distance and even instantaneously. That was found, that was proven. Now, and the difference matter. So that's the fundamental, the idea of quantum entanglement, that irrespective of the time, irrespective of the distance, if you change the state of one of the entangled photons, the other will also change. So far, so good. But how did the other photon know that the state has changed for this one and not of the other? Now some scientists postulated that maybe something faster than light means speed, means of communication between the photons. Photons said, look, my polarity has changed, my state has changed, so you make the corresponding change. Some means of communication. See, this all for understanding of locality, and also this whole cycle of cause and effect. All of these concepts are very much tied to each other. So whenever we see, say for example, I scale on the table, and then I hear the scale. It's not my thought that is creating it. I physically take the scale, I hit it on the table, and there is a vibration in the molecule. There is disturbance, and that makes a sound, and that reaches my ears. And this has to follow one after another. But if you hear the sound even before scale. I'm coming to that in a few moments. So you see, because people like to believe the locality that an action to happen, there has to be a local cause. Even if I, call you up and say you to do certain thing, but there is a communication, right? So I called you up and the message reached you, and then you acted upon the message. That's the whole idea of locality. And there's a chain of connection between the cause and the effect. So some scientists postulated that there must be some kind of a very high speed, faster than light communication, because it happens instantaneously, right? Between the two photons, for them to instantly correspond with each other when a change is made in one, and consequent change made in the other. Now you might think it is only about photons. No. Scientists have successfully demonstrated quantum entanglement with photons, electrons, molecules of various sizes, and even small diamonds, even with fiber optics cable. So it's not like we are talking about the microscopic world, and we don't have to think about it. I wish it was that simple. It wasn't. Now, one of the questions that I get asked every time I talk about quantum entanglement is how to entangle particles. So one is entanglement from birth. Cascade transition, it has been done since the 1980s using calcium atoms in high energy, which decayed by emitting two photons, which are entangled. Second generation entanglement, where we entangle the material, it happens by two entangled photons, and then they are absorbed by atoms, which then becomes entangled. And then there is another concept of entanglement by accident. Pair of atoms that emit the photons, when the photons are brought together in the right way, they can entangle the state of the two way that leads to entanglement of the original atoms. And then there is another called entanglement interaction. But now let's move into the principle of locality. So I've already explained to you. For an action at one point to have an influence at another point, something in the space between the points, such as a field, must mediate the action. The same concept that I used. This is one of the foundations, basic understanding of science. But quantum physics actually violates the locality in a big way. And again, there is quantum entanglement, as you will find out. So there has been experiments since 2003, 2004, which show that you could get quantum entanglement even back in time. So the cause can happen in the future, but the effect is already in the past. So I'll explain the experiment in brief. Imagine two entangled particles, and one of them has been captured in a device, so that state is known, but it is not observed. I mean, the scientists didn't see what was the result. And then the other particle continues, and the scientist decides to change. You can change the state of the particle, and for example, whether to capture it as a wave of particle, for instance, change that. And they decided how to change. And when they changed it, they found out that the particle which they have captured in the past has correspondingly changed. So the cause happened in the future. There was no way of knowing what would what the decision would be to change in the future, but in the past, the corresponding change have already occurred. This is very much very breakthrough experiment. It was repeated several times, and finally in around 2014-15 time frame, the paper was published in 2015. The NIST team of US, the National Institute of Standards, they have conducted the experiment, closing all the potential loopholes, and finally they concluded the NIST team proves spooky action at a distance is really real. Hidden local action is incompatible with experiment. experimental proof of non-local wave function collapse for a single particle using homodyne experiments. Let me tell you what exactly happened. Even if you assume that there is an interaction between the particle at faster than light speed, even instantaneous transmission, that explain how the state was changed in the past. And this is a very important findings, and that has been repeated many times. So now there is no doubt that this is a reality of the world as we know it. Three major. So they found out that there is no faster than light communication. They closed all the loopholes. One of them was the ensured fair sampling, the freedom of choice, and there was no faster than light communication to particles. So this has been established on solid scientific foundation. It is not, it is not anymore in the realm of theoretical physics. NIST proves no faster than light communication. Now, explain it in terms of your understanding of space and time. How is this possible that two particles, and now you know that even bigger particles, even diamond crystals can be entangled, how they can know what the other particle state is even back in the past? Does this not prove that your whole concept of space and time, it is illusory in nature? In their words, experiment, the two detectors measured photons from the same pair a few hundreds of nanoseconds apart, finishing more than 40 nanoseconds before any light speed communication could take place between the detectors. Information traveling at the speed of light would require 617 nanoseconds to travel between the detectors. Physics of the universe, as such, concluded. Non-locality suggests that now you see, these are not very, I'm not just quoting few magazines or scientists. In this last few years, there are several articles, several things. This experimental finding is irrefutable. So slowly scientists are comes with it. So what I am stating here is simply a sampling of the general consensus now. Non-locality suggests that the universe is in fact profoundly different from our habitual understanding of it, and that the separate parts of the universe are actually potentially connected in an intimate and immediate way. Then there was this another very interesting experiment. It was done by the physicists at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 2013. They have successfully entangled photons that never even coexisted. So imagine again a pair of entangled photons. You have the slides in front of you, and one of the photons state was measured, and it was pretty much destroyed. And then after some time, another set of entangled photons were created. And then one of that set of entangled photon and the remaining photon from this pair, they were entangled, and it was found out. And then finally, this other photon of the second entangled pair, that state was changed, and they found out that the first photon, which died long back, but its state was measured, it actually corresponded to that of the change state of the photon much ahead in the future. And they didn't even entangle, they never even coexisted at any point in space and time. I already talked about that whether the quantum physics works in the macroscopic world. The uncertainty principle, one of the most famous rules of physics, operates in macroscopic objects visible to the naked eye. The recent experiment are novel in the way that they show that both classical and quantum mechanics are operating on the same scale. It was a statement made by Shaurya Das, physics, University of Lethbridge in Canada. I talked about two diamond crystals, visible millimeter-sized diamond crystals at room temperature. They were quantum entangled. So this is not just a phenomena in the quantum realm. This is a phenomenon in the visible world. University of Geneva researchers managed to entangle crystals in 2011, but now they have entangled two optical fibers populated by 500 photons. So you see, this whole concept of causality, the effect after the cause. But now we have shown that effect can happen even before the cause. That breaks the rule of causality. The fact that things can come faster than instantaneously, even if it was instantaneously, that would have broken the rules of space. But they even communicate back in time. So what does that leave about our knowledge of space and time? Yes, we see them, but are they really real? We also see movies. You also see, when you play in immersive virtual reality game, they seem like real. Even your dream, they seem like real. But is your world really real, or is it an illusion? That is a question. There's an article by Forbes, Are Space, Time and Gravity All Just Illusion, from 2017. So to summarize, scientists have entangled particles in such a way that a future decision can affect the states of the particles. Whether these two particles, is a quotation, are entangled or separable, it has been decided after they have been measured, writes the researcher led by Xiaosong Ma of the Institute of the Quantum Optics and Quantum Information at the University of Vienna. Essentially, the scientists show that future action may influence past events. The role of the timing and the order of quantum measurements is not just a fundamental question of quantum mechanics, but also a puzzling one. Any part of the quantum system that has finished evolving can be measured immediately or saved for later without affecting the final results, regardless of the continued evolution of the rest of the system. In addition, the non-locality of quantum mechanics, as manifested by entanglement, does not apply only to particles with spatial separation, but also with temporal separation, space and time. So I mentioned about that experiment in Jerusalem where two particles which were quantum entangled, they didn't even coexist at the same point in space and time. The first photon was detected and destroyed even before the other was created. The observed quantum correlations manifest the non-locality of quantum mechanics in space-time. This is last few lines. They are actually quotations. So you can now understand that time itself is an illusion. Irrespective of your appearance of reality, it is really an illusion. Then what makes up the reality? If your space is illusion, if your time is illusion, your causality is illusion. Isn't your reality based on that? That is your takeaway thought. Our Munis and Rishis, what they have concluded eons ago, who knows how many thousands or millions of years ago. When I say million, of course there is a reason. In the description in Ramayana, there is a mention by Hanuman of 4 tusked elephants in Lanka. The same is also, the same elephants are also described by an Ashur in Lanka itself. Now, 4 tusked elephants according to archaeologists, they lasted 1.6 years back. After they were never found anywhere in the world. They went extinct. And yet they were in Lanka guarding the palace. Think whatever you want of it. So to further emphasize the point, Associate Professor Andrew Trusker said, reality doesn't exist if you are not looking at it. So what did we find out? Now you see, nowadays the experiment is much better, because they could experiment with single atoms. That leaves, no shadow of doubt about the accuracy of the experiment and the results. Experiment with single atom found out that interference was still generated, and you got the answer before question. Now let's look into reality of it. Now, as we already discussed, that what we perceive as reality is a mental image, and this is something which science has accepted since long. This is a mental image we make in our mind based on the perceptions we receive from our, the nerves, and which again receives it from our sensory organs. Panchendriyo, Pancho-indriyo, as we say in Sanskrit. Now, here scientists from argued, he gave an evolutionary argument that the reality outside is actually the reality in our mind, because if it wasn't, then due to the survival of the fittest, we would have been extinct. However, in recent times, even that was found to be wrong for two reasons. First of all, cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman uses evolutionary game theory to show that our perceptions of an independent reality must be illusion. He carried out extensive computer simulations, and in every case he found out that the reality lost. Now you see, the Darwin's hypothesis is survival of the fittest, not the survival of the reality. And in each case, they found out that the fittest model was not the real model. But is there a parallel in the real world? There is actually. In Australian outback, there are certain red-colored beetles that, for who knows how many thousands of years, they honed their evolutionary practice to look for females who are red in color and who had dimples, so rounded bottoms, and the bigger the better. The bigger the better. As it happened, the beer bottles that using in the Australian outback, they also were red in color, and they had the dimples, and they were way bigger than the beetles. So the male beetles to mate with them, and in the process almost went extinct. Evolution failed them. This showed that reality and fitness may not exactly correspond to each other. Survival of the fittest does not mean he is real. There is something else. Now, you must have heard that, if you reach the state of Brahma Gyan, if you know the ultimate truth, you conclusively know it, then you go beyond the laws of nature, go beyond the laws of space and time. Is there even a analogy gives you some idea? That actually it is possible or not? So when you are dreaming, you are bound by the laws of the dream, right? You get afraid, you fall, you get hurt, everything happens as in the real world. However, if within the dream you can realize that you are dreaming, a concept known as lucid dreaming, widely experimented upon and widely accepted, and there are many groups which share their experiences on lucid dreaming. So in lucid dreaming, as soon as you go lucid, you pretty much can do anything that you want in a lucid dream. one of the most common experiences, something which I also experienced many times, is you can fly. It's a very pleasant experience. You can go through walls, you can do, essentially the laws of the dream world do not apply to you anymore because you realize that it is a dream. It is similar to the real world, the so-called real world that we see. Once you understand the true nature of the world, then you effectively, the laws of the nature are not applicable to you. So with that, I will briefly go into the process, the system of the Gyan Marg. It is based upon vichar. Vichar is, analyzing things. It's a process of contemplation, thinking through things, and it's a threefold process. Sravan, Manan, Nididhyasana. Sravan is you listen from your guru, you listen from the words of realized gurus, like you read the books of the realized guru, because nowadays getting a good guru is hard. And then you think over it, you contemplate it, you try to understand it, and over time, all your doubts get clear as you do more contemplation, as you analyze it more thoroughly. And you have to understand one thing: you don't believe blindly anything. You question everything. Every aspect of your reality is questioned. Who are you, etc. And then once you you gain a complete understanding over it, then you try to realize that. Then you try to experience that understanding. That is a nididhyasana. This is a threefold process. And what do you contemplate upon? What do you think upon? Nitya anitya vichar. What is real and what is unreal? That's one of the things. And then one of the key things we do is, who am I? So I initially showed you that yes, we are not the body. Then are we the mind? But even the mind is changing. Are we the intelligence? Even the intelligence changes. But I haven't changed. From time I can remember, and some people even remember, their experiences before birth. We haven't changed. We remain the same. Yet our body has significantly changed. Our mind has changed. Our intelligence has changed. We have grown wiser. But we haven't changed. Then who are we? What remains, discarding everything, that we are. So in the slide, I will give you details of all the papers, all the stuff that I mentioned, all the references, around 4 or 5 pages of links that you can independently verify. And in your journey, I recommend that you go through certain, go through if you're interested in Dharma, obviously you are, otherwise you wouldn't have attended this. I'd request you to go through the Mukhya Upanishad. When I say Mukhya Upanishad, like, Ish Upanishad from the Shukla Yajurved, Ken Upanishad, Katha Upanishad, Prasna, Mundak, Mandukya, Taittiriya, Aitreya, Chandogya, and Brihadaranyaka. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because, in the 18th century, some malicious people, they created a book in Sanskrit and named it Upanishad. The same mischief was done even later. I'm not going into who did it and what, but it's so don't believe everything as Upanishad. Also, when this book try to go for multiple translations of it, if you cannot read Sanskrit, if you can read Sanskrit, you should definitely read it in Sanskrit. Take help of any annotation or translation, as you please, because many people have maliciously tried to even misinterpret books like Bhagavad Gita and so on. Books which have helped me, and they may help you too. Complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Tripura Rahasya, translated by Swami Sri Ramananda Saraswati of the Ramanashram. And I will end this with few statements of Swami Vivekananda. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external or internal. Now you will see all marg, Bhakti marg, Gyan marg, all that Karma Yoga, all these yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, all of these yoga, all of this is about quietening your mind, gaining your mind, and only then you realize the truth. It doesn't matter what path you follow, so long you follow it in a dedicated fashion. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more, or all of this, and be free. That's the goal. It doesn't matter what path you choose. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. Swami Vivekananda said in the preface of the Raj Yoga book. Thank you, and thank you for listening. Please feel free to ask me any questions.
Thank you, Angsuman ji. Really, I appreciate Sriman Angsuman ji, who being by profession is tech entrepreneur, consultant, software, and he's an architect. Apart from all the things, he has immense love for God. The only word I can say, immense love for God. That's the reason he could easily give us the beautiful discourse about the Vedantic. And this is there are two things which I just want to say. The consciousness, when you say something, physics never accept consciousness as we all know that. But at the same time, physics accepts something.
Physics accepts consciousness.
Yeah.
Physics cannot explain consciousness.
Yeah, physics. Energy is the word.
Physics cannot deny consciousness. Physics doesn't understand consciousness. So, somewhere in the 18th century, they decided that they are going to do everything but not delve into consciousness. Today, they are trying to, gain a deeper understanding of consciousness. But you see, this is, to understand truly consciousness, you have to look inside.
Correct.
You cannot find it. You cannot find it by looking outside. So they are, it's not that they are not trying to understand it, it's just they have been, proven incapable of understanding consciousness. And then they try to create a materialistic view of the world, keeping consciousness totally out of the equation. But that didn't work well. In very recent past, for example, this whole field of psychology is based upon the assumption of negating consciousness, just a materialistic view of the world, and try to predict human beings like we are some kind of a robot. And so more than 50% of the psychological papers, psychology papers, when they tried to replicate it, they found out that they couldn't replicate it. And even in the in the drug industry, in the medicines, they found out a huge problem in replication, even with the golden standards, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, clinical trials. Because you see, the consciousness changes the equation. We are not robots. We are not mere automatons. And physics is now slowly coming to grasp with that reality of consciousness.
Yes. We really appreciate, because usually spirituality and materialism, or you can say, are two different watertight compartments. Usually people think in that way. But it is the way you really, with the Vedantic principles and also the echoes of physics in Vedantic principles that you nicely explained. And now I request any, those who are in the audience, if anyone want to say like that, today we have a very good audience like Sarada Sunti and many others, and Dr. Mohan Ananda, Dr. Raji Ananda, and so those who have any question, please. Then we ask Simha Sriram, any questions? Yeah. And Srinivasa Acharya will conclude by saying vote of thanks to our Angsumanji. Yeah, now Simha.
Hi, Angsumanji. This is Simha.
Younger son. Younger brother of Srinivas.
So you touched upon Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which is like essentially increasing the. So if we increase the precision on say motion, we all know that. So then we are going to lose some precision on momentum or something similar, correct? The uncertainty principle in Heisenberg's. So, but the very closely misunderstood term is the observer effect. So that's what I'm interested in. You must also be also have touched upon a
See,
bit.
I'm actually having very hard time hearing. The voice is getting cut off.
Okay, okay,
Oh.
okay.
That's why I tried to switch off the TV.
Okay, okay, okay. You can.
But
Can you hear
the
now?
only point I will make with the uncertainty principle is previously, uncertainty principle was one of the things that they said, because that due to that the quantum level reality or quantum level stuff we cannot see in the macroscopic world. But now they found out that the uncertainty principle effects can be observed even in the macroscopic world. That was the only point I was
Correct.
trying to make.
Correct.
The other being the quantum entanglement they found out in macroscopic objects, in diamond crystals, as I mentioned. So that objection doesn't hold true, that this is only for the invisible world and doesn't affect our version of the reality.
Right.
That was the point I was
Right,
trying to make.
right. So, but
Please continue.
yeah.
If I
So
missed
yeah, no, no. So
answering.
so I am talking about the observer effect, which is like similar. So essentially, you already know, but for people who would not understand, the observer effect is essentially if you can experience it, but the moment you bring in an observer to the point, then the result can get corrupted. So from a reality example, say I can experience. So I am experiencing Parabrahman, for instance. So I think some of the people who are interested in spiritual, they already are experiencing this Parabrahman, and they're delving into it. But the moment I try to create it as an experiment, and I bring in somebody else to observe, then they are not being able to replicate it. But typically this Western world is about experiments and then results. But this, so I'm a little curious to find out, because is there this observer effect? Even in like quantum physics, you have the double slit experiment. Passive observation of quantum phenomena can also corrupt the actual outcome. So this is just I'm touching upon it. Maybe there is no answer to it, but I'm just thinking, because just like say Ramakrishna Parahamsa has experienced it, but when Vivekananda says, he says, I didn't see it, I couldn't see it, but he could see it afterward, later. So I'm saying, is this observer effect in act? Okay, when people realize God, that when somebody is observing, they are not being able to replicate the same results that the actual person himself experienced. So this is just an observation. Maybe you have something to say on it. Or
You see, you are conflating two issues here. The observer effect is a real thing. Your observation affects the reality in quantum realm, and now in the real realm also. As for the perception of Brahmagyan, or even a glimpse of the reality, unless you experience it, even if I tell you about my experience, you won't be convinced. It's not about see, the truth has to be experienced personally. Even if I tell you the wonderful experience I had, you would not believe me, because at some level you doubt it, because it is so far removed from your perception of reality. And unless your mental shackles are broken, vidyate hridaya granthi chiddante sarva samshaya khiyante chasya karmani tasmin dishte paravare, you won't believe me. You read it, you repeatedly read it, you may want to believe it, but you won't. So see, the whole of religious experience is personal. You have to experience God, and that is the beginning of religion. Everything else is just talk. Real religion comes when you get some kind of experience. I know a saint, a sadhu, in the Bharat Sevashram order. He had such an experience, listening, reading the book of Yoganand. When he was reading Yoganand's experience, he had a similar experience suddenly. And that forced him, that caused him to become a monk. He was a computer scientist. Obviously, many people who have gone into this spiritual world, they have had certain experience. Now, these experiences are, but hard to describe because people don't believe it. But that doesn't mean they are not replicable. That doesn't mean they are not real, because you can change physical world. You can impact the reality. Absolutely, there is no doubt. So again, as with any scientific process, if you tell me, hey, you know what, Bernoulli's principles are wrong, I have to prove it for yourself and invalidate it. Same here. Go in, put in the effort, try it your honest, and prove it whether it is right or wrong. Simple as that.
Okay, thank you.
থ্যাংক ইউ খুব ভালো খুব ভালো খুব ভালো আছে আমাদের ছেলেরা ওই মাটিতে বড় হয়ে গেল কলকাতাতে আমরা তো আমাদের স্বামী ওখানে তো সাইক্লোট্রন প্রজেক্টে কাজ করতো, আমরা ওখানে থাকতাম। So, খুব আনন্দ অংশুমানজি। নাও আমাদের বড় ছেলে শ্রীনিবাস আচার্য will say, জয় শ্রীমনারায়ণ।
Thank you, everyone. I already shared the slides with Srini, so he will share it with you.
Yeah. And Srinivas Acharya.
May I take lead?
Yeah, we'll say a few words. Anybody want to ask any more? Now we are concluding the session. Now, Nanalu, Jai Simanarana. Is he saying? Is it? Jai Simanarana. We cannot hear. Raman.
One second. Just
Jai Simanarana. Hey. Yeah.
Thank you, Anshumanji.
Okay, should I?
Thank
no.
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anshumanji. I always enjoyed your
I'm signing now.
posts on Facebook.
This is
And
Srinivas.
we would definitely like to have you back on one of these sessions. I got the slides, and we will be hosting them on our channels for others to also see the lecture on YouTube and Facebook, and I will send you the link to it once we have it ready.
Okay.
Thank you again. It was really enjoyable listening to you for that. Thank you so much.
And we request you to frequently, we want your talks in our Sri Pravachana Goshthi. Frequently we
Okay,
request
sure.
you to come again and give the valuable topics which you are actually dealing with, that we appreciate, and a Vedic blessing. Usually
Okay.
whoever come, the great thing what we can give is the
Okay.
blessings of Sriman Narayana. Om Sri Varchasvam Ayushyam Arogyam Avidhat Dhanyam Dhanam Pasum Bahuputra Labham Seta Samhatsaram Dirghamayuhu शतमानं भवति शतायुः आयुष्येवेन्द्रियै प्रतितिष्ठति सकलसन्मङ्गलानि भवन्तु आयुरारोग्य ऐश्वर्याभिवृद्धिसिद्धिरस्तु राजद्वारे राजगृहे कार्यालये वृत्तिव्यापारे सर्वतोमुख अभिवृद्धिसिद्धिरस्तु भगवद्भागवत आचार्य कैंकर्य परता सिद्धिरस्तु उन्नतोन्नत अभिवृद्धि सिद्धिरस्तु अंशुमान चक्रवर्ती महोदयाय अनेक शुभकामनाः। जय श्रीमन्नारायण।